This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America for another week. Monday morning, I'm Seth Merrill. Thanks for joining us on the show this morning. We will be joined by Mike Penna, Horse Racing Radio Network, a Monday morning stakes recap. We'll take a look back at some of the top stakes from this past weekend that featured plenty of top stakes racing action. Bottom of the hour, excuse me, we'll be joined by Jenny Reese of the Louisville Courier-Journal. Take a look at some of the Churchill action over the weekend and also their meet wrapped up. So we'll get a kind of a little fall meet, traditional fall meet recap from Jenny, again, about the bottom of the hour. Kentucky Derby Future Pool closed on Saturday. Again, this was the earliest available Kentucky Derby Future Pool ever, November 27th to the 30th of the two-year-old season. They've never done that before. It turned out to have a total handle of $273,000. Win wager $238,000. The exacta wagering $35,000. All others, I said on the Handicappers Report, I was surprised all others was 4 to 5. I think that by Kentucky Derby Day, that could be very generous. I mean, it's very possible. I'm going to be interested to see, and I'm going to chart it when they all enter the gate on the first Saturday in May to see how many of the 23 individual entrants in here wind up in the starting gate, because it wouldn't shock me at all if none of them wound up in the starting gate, in which case that $3.60 on all others just becomes a sure thing. And so the $3.60, 4 to 5, I thought all others would float down to about 1 to 5. So I was a little bit surprised at that. The individual entrants themselves, the favored individual entrant, and again, because of the change in the rules this year, the pool closed before the two-year-old races went off, the Remsen Kentucky Jockey Club on Saturday. The individual entrant with the shortest odds, 10 to 1 on Honor Code. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner, New Year's Day, 15 to 1. Just to give you some ideas of some of the other odds. Cairo Prince, who ran so well behind Honor Code in the Remsen, 26 to 1. Havana, 26 to 1. Just looking down, Delta Jackpot winner, Rise Up, 50 to 1 there. That's about where I would start sniffing. So Rise Up, of course, Rise Up, a very good record except for one race. The one poor race was over Churchill Down Strip. So there's maybe a little bit of concern there. But again, this is a horse with a pretty good record to have that 50 to 1 price. And that, to me, once you start getting 50 to 1, I'm a little bit interested in November. But it's still, there's a long ways out to the race to take some of these odds. Shared Belief, the horse with a lot of potential out in Southern California, 32 to 1. Strong Mandate, the hopeful winner, 27 to 1. Tapit Rich, the promising Baffert horse that disappointed a little bit in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but I still think has some talent, 25 to 1. So again, there's some ideas of the odds in the Breeders' Cup, in the Kentucky Derby Future Pool 1, which closed this weekend. Kentucky Derby points leaderboard. Currently, the horses at the top with 14 points are Honor Code and Havana. Again, they both have 14 points. And the horse, the last horse to make it in the gate this past Kentucky Derby, 2013 Kentucky Derby, which was the first run with this particular point system, the last horse to make it in the gate made it in the gate with about 10 points, I think. So it's possible that Honor Code and Havana now have guaranteed themselves a spot. We only have that 1 year to look at, so we don't have a great sample, but they both, again, have 14 points. They're followed by Tapiture, who won this weekend down in Kentucky, has 12 points. Bondholder with 11. Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner New Year's Day has 10. Rise Up has 10. Weemus already has 10. Amy's Holiday also with 10. Claiborne with 10. And then it goes down from there to 5 points and 4 points and so on. But again, there's a couple of horses out there now with 14 points, which you look back at last year, that was essentially, and I have right here, in fact, last year's 10 points. It was Giant Finish was the last horse to get into the gate on the point system in 2013, and Giant Finish had 10 Kentucky Derby points in May of 2013. So 10 points got you in last year. We'll see. There's we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 9 horses right now with either 10 or higher points. So given that, I would actually think that we're going to look for a higher point total this year to maybe get you into the gate. Because again, they added a couple of races early on this year to the Kentucky Derby points mix, and that may change things up a little bit as well. Yesterday at Aqueduct, just to note, Long River won the Time for a Change, the stakes race on the card yesterday at Aqueduct. Micromanage ran second. Long River was the McLaughlin Darley runner, went off as the even money favorite there. So no surprises in the Time for a Change, Sunday's feature down at Aqueduct. Looked at a lot of stakes races over the weekend, talked about them on Handicappers Report. We talked about them and showed some of them on Loose on the Lead yesterday, my partner Steve Bick and I. There was also, as well as on the flat, there was also some big racing on the harness side over the weekend at the brand new Meadowlands, which has been getting some good reviews. The new scaled down facility there opened up a week ago. And again, it's been getting some good reviews. The crowds have been good. The betting has been decent. We'll keep our eyes on that to see how that new scaled down but upscaled on the inside, it seems like. So we'll keep our eyes on how that facility does. But on Saturday night, they had the TVG Free-for-All, over a $500,000 purse. And a big field showed up. Captain Treacherous was in the mix, the 3-year-old superstar, but the winner of the free-for-all, the $500,000 race, the feature race at the Meadowlands on Saturday night, was 9-year-old Foiled Again. Pulled it up before, and let me just pull out my PPs here. Yeah, Foiled Again is a 9-year-old. Went over, I'm assuming with the purse, went over, is very close now to $6 million in earnings. So a 9-year-old out there still pacing away and gets it done on Saturday night at the Meadowlands in the $500,000 race. Now, Captain Treacherous, a harness horse we've been following here on the show all year long, really a superstar 3-year-old on the sulky side. Disappoints, running 6th in the race, top of the stretch, looked to be right there. Could not sustain, winds up running a disappointing 6th. So Captain Treacherous now strings essentially a couple of disappointments to get. Well, I'm looking last time out, we got to go back. 2 starts back, had the defeat. Did win a stakes race last time out, had a qualifying win for this race in the last, but again, that was just a qualifier. It was a non-betting event. But a couple of starts back, a 2nd place finish, and then the 6th place Saturday night. So Captain Treacherous maybe winding up the season a little bit disappointing. On the flip side, and the horse that looks like maybe the harness horse of the year, Be a Magician, the 3-year-old filly trotter that we've talked about a little bit too. Be a Magician also was in a big money event down at the Meadowlands on Saturday night. Over $250,000 in the moneymaker for 3-year-old fillies. Be a Magician gets it done at 5 cents to the dollar, $2.10 to win. Be a Magician gets it done, running her record in 2013 to 17 for 17. And I think if you read the tea leaves and read some of the harness commentary, it looks like that'll be enough to get Be a Magician the harness horse of the year nod. We'll see how it shakes out. Still some racing to be done. But again, it looks like Be a Magician, at this point, probably the front runner to be the harness horse of the year with that 17-0 record. Also notable over the weekend, again, it was a big racing weekend coast to coast. I just did the harness side. Now we'll look a little bit international, excuse me, because there was a big race over in Japan on the weekend that had a little bit of U.S. rooting interest. That was the Japan Cup. Japan Cup was run Sunday at Hanshin Racecourse. Belshazzar got the job done, won the race. And I bring this up because we had, again, a little USA rooting interest. Pants on Fire for Kelly Breen was running. Gary Stevens was on board in the Japan Cup on Sunday. Pants on Fire disappoints, running 16th in a field of 16. So, again, a disappointment for the U.S. interests over there in Japan in the Japan Cup. Also disappointing, they had the World Super Jockeys Series. Couple of days of competition for jockeys, top jockeys from around the world in Japan. And Richard Hughes winds up the winner in the World Super Jockeys Series over in Japan. Richard Hughes, the winner. Ryan Moore, who of course has been on a hot streak for a while, winds up 8th. Again, USA rooting interest disappoints. Gary Stevens, in a field of 15 jockeys, Gary Stevens winds up 14th. I will say this, though, and I'm not exactly sure how they draw in this one. I think there was a series, it was over a couple of days, and I think it was a series of either 4 or 6 races total that these guys ran in. And I'm not sure how they do it, but these jockeys competitions typically, it's a little bit of a crapshoot because it's just a blind draw typically. And so if you, as a jockey, you wind up with some horses that are kind of long shots anyway, you're a little bit up against it. So as I say, it's a little bit of a luck of the draw kind of a situation oftentimes in these jockeys competitions. I don't know, some of them they try to even them out a little bit, I think, but so I'm not quite sure how they do it in this one. But no matter what you do, as I say, a little bit of a luck of the draw kind of situation. So that Gary Stevens may just have been up against it a little bit there. But Gary Stevens in the Japan World Super Jockeys Series that wound up over the weekend winds up 14 in a field of 15. Richard Hughes winds up to be the winner in that event. Also in the news, internationally, we got the Hong Kong International races coming up next weekend. A little bit of bad news for U.S. rooting interest there. King Krisa has been noted to have come down with a little bit of travel sickness ahead of the Hong Kong Mile. The veterinarian that was looking at him says a horse suffering from travel sickness won't eat and he will be dull and depressed. However, good news, King Krisa is not displaying those signs. So there was a little bit of dullness, there was maybe a little temperature, they were getting some symptoms, maybe of travel sickness. They reacted to it pretty quickly, antibiotics, and it looks like King Krisa is doing a little bit better. They've advised that he shouldn't do too much track work, obviously, it might make things worse, but the veterinarian said the fact that he is eating and drinking makes you think that he will recover and race, but they're going to keep an eye on him. So King Krisa, again, Jeremiah Englehart's horse, who we here in New York and up at Saratoga, where he ran so well against Wise Dan this summer, have some rooting interest there. Hopefully in the Hong Kong International races coming up, we'll keep our eyes on that and hope that the travel sickness doesn't set him back. There was a situation traveling to Japan for the 2 U.S. horses that'll give us some rooting interest, King Krisa and Little Mike from Dale Romans. Their flights were delayed. They were supposed to leave last Wednesday at about 2:45 a.m. They didn't leave until probably 8 o'clock in the morning. According to the reports, though, the connections knew that the flight was going to be delayed, and so they were essentially, the horses were still in their stalls. Shouldn't have been a big problem. It was interesting here, though, reading the schedule. The horses are picked up in New York, also picked up in Chicago before flying to Hong Kong via Anchorage. So a long trip, which contributes to the possibility of that travel sickness kind of a situation. But it looked like Little Mike and King Krisa, again, there was a delay in the flight out, but that didn't really affect them. But subsequently, it's always a very long flight over there. So King Krisa maybe came out of it a little bit under the weather, but we'll hope he bounces back. Brought up the Kentucky Derby future wager earlier and the odds. There was also an exacta pool, and this was interesting. Jenny Reese, who I have on the show later, had a column where she consulted with the folks at Churchill Downs, and I wondered about this. Obviously, and I said, it wouldn't be surprising if of the 23 individual entrants, we're in November. Wouldn't be a shock if none of those wound up in the starting gate. Well, if you bet an exacta, and you can't bet a 24-24 exacta. 24 is the all other button, essentially. You can't go 24-24 on the exacta. So all exacta bets, even if you had all others, either underneath or on top, you had to have one of the individual entrants. Well, what if one of the individual entrants doesn't wind up in the race or doesn't wind up in the exacta? According to Jenny Reese, then, talking to the Churchill Downs folks, it would become a consolation wager at that point. Talking about the Kentucky Future exacta wager. Let's say you played 24 over 3 or 24 over any of them, and none of those individual entrants in this first pool comes in underneath. What's going to happen is you're going to get a consolation bet that essentially is going to turn it into a win wager is what's going to happen. Everybody who has 24 on top, has the all others on top, is going to collect. So if you're looking at that exacted grid and the will pays, do remember that price will be cut if one of the individual entrants doesn't get in, if you have an all others in the mix. As I say, it'll become a consolation bet then, essentially, that will, for all intents and purposes, be a win wager. All right, we're going to head to the first break. When we come back, Mike Penna for the Horse Racing Radio Network will join us. But this is a race I talked about a little bit last week with the shortened week last week and being off on Thursday. We didn't have a chance to look at this one. But we're going to go into the first break looking at our buddy Ben's Cat, who we followed throughout the year over at Parks and certainly on the Maryland circuit. Goes out for the venerable King Leatherberry. Ben's Cat with his come-from-behind running style. A lot of fun to watch. He went out at Penn National Wednesday night. They had a nice stakes card there. The Fabulous Strike. Ben's Cat, of course, is primarily a turf sprinter. But the last time he was seen on dirt, he won the Fabulous Strike at Penn National last year. So he was coming back, trying for a repeat in this race. $250,000 purse, 6 furlongs on dirt. Ben's Cat is going to be the number 2 horse. Rio Bobo, the number 7 horse. Rio Bobo went off the 4-5 favorite. Good Morning Diva, the number 4 horse, went off as the 2-1 second choice. Betting public lets Ben's Cat get away at 7-2. Ben's Cat, again, number 2. Rio Bobo, number 7. As we go to the break, we will watch last Wednesday night's Fabulous Strike from Penn National. Enjoy, and when we come back, Mike Penna from the Horse Racing Radio Network.
They're off in the Fabulous Strike handicap. Ribbo Bobo came away sharply, filled with Wonder Show speed. Then along the inside, here's Ben's Cat close tonight. Ribbo Bobo has it by just over a length. Filled with Wonder is second. Ben's Cat a close third inside. The far outside City of Weston is fourth. Moonstruck Cowboy races fifth. In between horses then, it's back 40. Then about 6.5 lengths to Good Morning Diva trailing. Opening quarter, 22-1. They race to the far turn. Ribbo Bobo holds it by a little more than a length. Ben's Cat is now laying second. To the outside, Filled with Wonder races third. 2 lengths to back 44th. City of Weston is next. Then comes Moonstruck Cowboy, trying to run on then Good Morning Diva as they move to the top of the lane. The half 44-4, and they straighten here in the Fabulous Strike. Ribbo Bobo leads it, but Ben's Cat's going to challenge the outside. The 2 principals will battle here in the final furlong. Ribbo Bobo has it ahead, but Ben's Cat and Julian Pimentel have collared him with a 16th to go. Last year's champion, Ben's Cat. This is a racehorse. Ben's Cat to repeat in the Fabulous Strike. Ribbo Bobo was second. Along for third was Good Morning Diva. Checking in fourth, back 40.
I'm Mark Cassano. Join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch. We'll inform, analyze, and welcome in the biggest names in racing. So join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch, right here on the OTB Television Network.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right, the 2013 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes and a seat at the 2014 National Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month, the Capital Cup on December 7th. So sign up today online at CapitalOTB.com or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook. And don't forget our Showviver Series, Capital OTB's online handicapping contest.
I'm Anthony Mormino. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Monday morning. As noted before the break, happy to be joined by Mike Penna, the Horse Racing Radio Network. Good morning, Mike. How was your Thanksgiving?
Hey, Seth. Good morning. Yeah, everything was good, and happy to be back with you following a bit of a layoff and hoping I can fire fresh here for you this morning.
Absolutely. And, Mike, before we get into some of the racing, I went back, as I always do, checked out the HRRN archive, and I saw last week you had Dale Romans on. And I just wanted you to comment a little bit because Dale, I think, gave your listeners a little insight. Don't give up on medal count yet. And he also talked a little bit about Little Mike in Hong Kong.
Yeah, he's looking forward to getting over there with Little Mike. He knows it's a difficult assignment for him to go all the way over there. But, like you said, you don't get these types of horses every year. And to have a horse like Little Mike that can take you to the big races and the big sites all over the world is pretty special. So he's looking forward to that trip. And you're right about medal count. This is a 2-year-old that didn't show up in the Breeders' Cup for Dale, and it was kind of a head-scratcher for him. But he really feels like this is a horse that can be special. And he said that if this horse doesn't turn out to be a good horse and a good 3-year-old, then it's going to be as wrong as he has ever been. So probably a horse to keep an eye on as we get closer to that first Saturday in May.
Yeah, I felt that was worth noting because just what you said, Dale seemed really still behind this horse. And Medal Count was a little bit of a wise guy horse. That week leading up, I had probably 2 or 3 guests mention Medal Count before the Breeders' Cup. And so he threw in a little bit of a clunker. And just so people don't hop off the bandwagon, just keep him in mind. Should be kind of interesting. And Mike, just before we go on, speaking of that, I wonder if you had any thoughts on the Kentucky Derby future pool. I thought 4 to 5 on all others looked pretty generous.
Yeah, when it's this early in the game, and this is the earliest future poll that Churchill has ever offered, when it's this early in the game, you have to kind of take the main body of the wager with a little grain of salt because there's going to be, I don't know, I would venture to say, 2 or 3 from that main body that actually make it to the Kentucky Derby. So I think you're going to have a lot of horses that people will wager on that won't even be in the starting gate, but that all others field certainly looks pretty good at, as you said, at 4 to 5.
Yeah, I was thinking about 1 to 5. I saw 4 to 5. I thought, wow, because I could legitimately see the other 23, none of them making. I mean, I think that's a possibility. At which point, that 360 is like free money. So we'll see how things shake out, though. I will be charting when they enter the gate on the first Saturday in May. I'm going to be making check marks next to this opening future pool field and see how many actually do make it to the gate because, boy, it's really early. As I said last week, I'd start sniffing in this pool at about 50 to 1 because I think of those odds just to get into the gate at this point.
Yeah, I think so, too. And, that's why I say 2, 3, maybe 4 horses tops from the main body of that future wager field. It is a realistic number because there's so much to be decided. So many horses are going to have poor efforts between now and then when they're expected to have, really good efforts, and that could take them off the Derby trail. We see horses all the time come up with little injuries that keep them out of it. So it's a high-risk proposition, but again, if you get the right horse and if there is value to be had, it could be a very high-reward proposition as well.
Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out. All right, let's take a look at some of the action from this past weekend. Let's go back to last Friday at Churchill Downs, certainly one of the highlights of the weekend. The Clark Grade 1 event, $500,000 purse, 1 mile and an eighth. We're going to watch the stretch run here, and we're going to see number 7, Will Take Charge, run down number 1, Game On Dude. I think both of these horses had some Eclipse implications potentially on their resume. Will Take Charge, I think, certainly will wind up with a 3-year-old Eclipse now coming out of this race. But these were the 2 logical horses, and boy, they didn't disappoint.
No, they didn't, and I had said on the show Saturday morning that it's not often in the world of sports that we see an event live up to the hype and play out the way it's supposed to play out, and that's what we got with the Clark Handicap. Game On Dude showed up. He brought his A race. He looked like a winner inside the 8th pole, but Will Take Charge, as he always does, just kept coming and coming and coming and was able to eventually get by him in the shadow of the wire. And you're right, in terms of the Eclipse conversation, Game On Dude needed to win the Clark and needed to win it relatively convincingly to cement his case for Horse of the Year following that another flop in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Will Take Charge, as Darren Rogers from Churchill Downs pointed out on our show this past week, maybe had the most to lose of any horse in there because he had probably in a lot of people's eyes, already done enough to cement the 3-year-old championship with that runner-up performance and that narrow defeat in the Classic. But if he came back and ran a stinker in the Clark, then a lot of people would say, hey, wait a minute now, maybe this horse wasn't quite what we thought he was, and all eyes might shift back to Orb and the Derby winner being a candidate for that 3-year-old championship. But that didn't happen. Will Take Charge ran a great race. He gets up, he wins, and I think you're right. I think that now it's going to have to go to Will Take Charge. It didn't matter what happened earlier in the season. So much of this game is what have you done for me lately. And although Will Take Charge was absolutely drilled in all 3 Triple Crown races, he really, really, really got good this summer and this fall. And that big win over older horses is going to probably cement his case for the 3-year-old championship.
Yeah, and that's clearly the knock on him. The Triple Crown races, he just didn't show up, it seems like, although there was maybe some excuses, but got really good late summer and certainly put together a late season campaign. And you add the win in against older horses, particularly a horse like Game On Dude, I have to think the voters will definitely nod in his direction. We talked earlier on the Handicappers Report, the show just prior to this. Older Male, did the close second place finish do enough to maybe tilt some voters towards Game On Dude?
I don't know. When you look at his body of work, it is so good. I mean, he seems like he does this every year. He is so good in the early part of the year and then into the late summer, and then just can't quite finish the deal at the end of the year when it comes to the Breeders' Cup and then a race like the Clark. And as good as he ran in the Clark Handicap, I don't know if voters will, and I am a voter, and sitting back and looking at the other horses that are going to be in that category, probably a horse like Wise Dan, the reigning horse of the year, is going to be a candidate for that title. Mucho Macho Man, I would assume, is going to be another horse that will be nominated for the older horse division. You know, boy, that's stiff competition for Game On Dude, and people are going to look at him as saying, hey, he disappointed us again. Maybe he's not deserving.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one to see how it shakes out. Because, again, I think there's a prejudice against Wise Dan as a grass horse, but I think a lot of voters say, well, wait a minute, if he's Horse of the Year, then he has to be the Older Male. How can he not be? How can he not win that category? So it's just going to be fun to see how that one shakes out, because that's one that I don't think has defined itself as well as now the 3-year-old division has. All right, let's shift our attention now to Saturday, the Cigar Mile, another highlight from the weekend. I certainly think those bonus dollars they threw out there attracted a very nice field. Maybe a little bit of a disappointment for me. I thought Golden Sense was going to run better. However, as we watched the race, there may be an excuse there. Groupie Doll, maybe a little bit disappointing running 4th, but I think there'll be an excuse there. And we see the start right here. We're picking it up. And you saw the bad start by Saratoga Snacks. Certainly Bill Parcells and Gary Siaka had to be disappointed. But if you watch the head on there, Golden Sense kind of gets smacked and bumped pretty good when Saratoga Snacks comes down. The horses on the inside and the outside of Snacks, and Golden Sense is one come in and collide. So there may have been an excuse there, although Golden Sense then gets up into the hunt a little bit. However, I will tell people to keep their eyes on the number 3, Clearly Now, who's edging up the fence. Right behind Clearly Now is the number 4, Groupie Doll. And as they come around the turn, I think we're all aware of Clearly Now having a little bit of trouble running up on the heels. But I'll tell viewers, keep your eyes on Groupie Doll, because Groupie Doll also has to snatch up behind Clearly Now. And given her 4th place finish, I think she might have a little bit of an excuse. I don't know whether she's going to catch Flat Out, but I think she might have been better than that 4th place finish indicates. So her disappointment, maybe not so bad. As I say, I think Golden Sense maybe also a little bit of an excuse. Verrazano running 3rd, I thought was a pretty good effort, but nothing to take away from Flat Out. This was just a very nice performance in the Cigar Mile from the winner.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on Golden Sense and on Groupie Doll. I did think Golden Sense had some issues there early in the race, and Groupie Doll was certainly in traffic for much of the race, didn't have much of an opportunity to run. You know, she is just so good. I don't know if she would have beaten Flat Out, whether she was good enough on this day to hold off Flat Out, but she would have been closer without those traffic troubles. And you're right, when she was following Clearly Now and had to steady just for a minute under Rajiv, it may have cost her a couple of lengths there and maybe a 3rd or even a 2nd place position when it was all said and done if she had had a little bit of a clearer run. But take nothing away from her, take nothing away from Golden Sense. They had great years, and this just, for whatever reason, wasn't their day without the clean trips. And, it's interesting when you go back and you look at the 25-year history of the Cigar Mile now, no Breeders' Cup winner has returned to win the Cigar Mile. There have been horses that have competed and been beaten in the Breeders' Cup to come on and win, but no horse that has won a Breeders' Cup race has returned to win the Cigar Mile. And I really think that it attributes to the ultimate goal being the Breeders' Cup at the end of the year, and these horses are pointed for that. They're looking to peak on that day, and their trainers get them to peak, and then to get them back to that peak level again for a race the quality of the Cigar Mile 4 weeks later is very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. And last week, I know a lot of folks were taking that handicapping angle with some of the horses coming into the weekend races, looking at the Breeders' Cup. And then a horse like Verrazano, they were talking about potentially retiring the horse. So they bring the horse up to the Breeders' Cup, disappoints there a little bit, and then they go to Plan B. But as you said, you're aiming for that Breeders' Cup to be the pinnacle, the punctuation on the year. So then to kind of regroup and come back, it changes the plans a little bit, no question about it. But flat out, very nice performance by him. And again, validated the fact that he's not just a Belmont runner. Belmont, really nice year for Belmont, and flat out, congratulations to them. Let's look one race later on the card. We talked about the Kentucky Derby Future Pool earlier. The horse that was the shortest individual price in the pool wound up to be Honor Code, and we're going to watch Honor Code in the Remsen. We're going to pick the race up early enough to see Honor Code up on this absolutely dawdling pace. And we had Richard Migliori on with us yesterday, and he noted he just thinks jockeys these days don't have the kind of schooling and training that was given to jockeys when he was out there, that taught them in the mornings that clock in the head kind of scenario. And he just thinks jockeys don't have it these days. As such, a guy like Javier Castellano, you tip your hat to him. You see number 4, Honor Code, getting up and on this really slow pace. Hats off to him, because this is against Honor Code's running style, but he sensed what is just a turtle-like pace. We see Honor Code sitting off of it. Honor Code will take the lead, but then get passed by Cairo Prince. And boy, Mike, I have to say, I love a couple of things about Honor Code in this race. The fact that he was up there on the pace, outside of his comfort zone style-wise, but then to come back on the inside the way he did in the stretch, that's just not something you see very often either. So final time of the race, it's hard. It's run so in such a quirky fashion, it's hard to know exactly what to make of this race, but he's going to be fun watching going forward as a 3-year-old.
Yeah, and trainer Shug McGahee described the race as peculiar, and I think that's a good way to put it. When you look at those early fractions, the opening half mile, 52.74, 6 furlongs, 117.56. That's more of a mile and a half on the grass type of pace. It was not really what we're used to seeing in the Remsen. And I'm not sold that Honor Code was really taken out of his game. I think that this is a horse that doesn't have a lot of early speed. Shug joined me on the show Saturday morning, and he thought that when he went 2 turns, he was hoping that would allow him, with softer fractions, which certainly he got on Saturday, to be a little bit closer. But I don't think even Shug expected it to go in 117.56 for 6 furlongs. And my thought on it is that Honor Code really went at his pace. He was going at a comfortable pace, well within himself. And if they had gone the 6 furlongs in 113, 114 and change, he would have been much further back and still going at the same speed. So I think the fact that he was a little bit closer was more of attributed to the pace as opposed to him maybe trying something new and laying a little bit closer. We're still going to have to see how he develops into his 3-year-old season. But Shug said he'll go down to Payson, the winter down there in Florida, and more than likely take the same route that Orb took last year and go the Florida route to try to get to the Kentucky Derby. But when you look at the way he came back against a really nice horse in Cairo Prince, being down toward the inside, showing a lot of maturity for a young horse, and able to battle back after being passed in the stretch, you have to be feeling pretty good about Honor Code, and feeling really good about Cairo Prince as well, who we're going to hear more from. He's now was undefeated and a Grade 2 winner going into the Remsen, and ran a bang-up race. And again, it was a race that really did not deserve a loser when you look at the way both of those juveniles ran. Yeah,
and Kieran McLaughlin, I don't think, was really happy with the ride in the stretch. I think he thought the jockey should have been perhaps a little more active. Jimmy Jerkins, Wicked Strong, the third-place finisher, I think could also be interesting going forward. And yeah, my colleague on the Handicappers Report earlier agreed with you, thinking that Honor Code really wasn't out of his comfort zone. My feeling on those horses, though, is I think it's not only the pace, I think they like to have some horses to shoot at. So I think they like to be back a little further and pick up horses. However, given that when the pace is 117, it's probably a lot easier for him to be up there in the front of the pack and not have those horses to shoot at, because that was just so slow. It was really a head scratcher. And as I say, we talked to Migliori yesterday, and he couldn't explain it either, except to say in his day, he'd go out in the morning, and if you were working out a horse and you were a fifth or 2/5 off what the trainer wanted, that you would hear about it. And he said it's just not the way it is on the backstretch these days, and you see it time and time again. But boy, that was really a blatant example of it. Mike, before we let you go, just wanted to touch on one more stakes race from the weekend. Hawthorne Gold Cup, obviously out at Hawthorne, Grade 2 event. This has a $500,000 purse, a $350,000 purse. They're going 1.25 miles. Wanted to bring this one up because Chad Brown's Last Gunfighter comes off a 5th place finish in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Went off as the 4-5 favorite in the Hawthorne Gold Cup. Betting Public had it right here at 5-2. The second choice, Alpha, the number 5 horse, is going to disappoint and run 4th in here for Kieran McLaughlin and Eddie Castro. But a nice win in the Hawthorne Gold Cup for Last Gunfighter. Just seems to be kind of a nice blue-collar stakes quality runner.
Yeah, I think so too. And a horse that, following that Breeders' Cup Classic effort where he was 5th, figured to be prominent here in the Hawthorne Gold Cup, and he certainly didn't disappoint at a short price. And Chad Brown joined us during the week at Santa Anita before the Breeders' Cup, and he told us, he said, look, if we can be on the board in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic with Last Gunfighter, we will be absolutely thrilled. We know that it's a tough assignment. We know the one hole wasn't an ideal draw for him. So if we can just end up hitting the board with him in a race like this, it would be a huge accomplishment. Well, he didn't miss by much. He was 5th, only beaten 4 3/4 lengths that day. And so when he came to the Hawthorne Gold Cup, a much easier spot, there were no Mucho Macho Mans or Will Take Charge in that spot. He figured, and he didn't disappoint. Alpha, on the other hand, I think we're starting to see what Alpha's all about. Outside of Saratoga, it's hard to back him with any confidence, and to have him bet down to such a short price, even though he had some backlash, was a little bit surprising in there to me. I wouldn't have taken him at a short price. I thought Last Gunfighter was much more of a sure thing, and he proved it.
Yeah, and Last Gunfighter, as I say, kind of an interesting blue-collar horse. This time of the year, last year, November 2012, was in an optional claimer at Aqueduct, winning that one after just breaking his maiden. So in the past year, has put most of the money in the bank, and that's well over $800,000. In fact, after the weekend, we're probably up close to $1 million now for the Last Gunfighter. So certainly one to keep our eyes on, again, in those kind of blue-collar stakes races. Mike, certainly appreciate the visit this morning. Again, tout people to stop by the Horse Racing Radio Network website, catch the archives. Last week, Shug McGahee, Dale Romans joined you, so you can hear their comments and thoughts on the weekend racing. And as I say, Dale touts medal count and also talked a little bit about Little Mike in Hong Kong. And we appreciate the visit this week, the return visit, and hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, Seth, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you then. Thanks.
All right, Mike Penna from the Horse Racing Radio Network. Going to take our next break. When we come back, Jenny Reese of the Louisville Courier-Journal. We'll talk a little Churchill Downs Stakes action over the weekend and put a little bow and wrap up their meet. Stay tuned.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Cassano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
This is Steve Beck. Join me Tuesday through Saturday here on OTB TV for At the Races, my Sirius XM daily news magazine of the thoroughbred industry. Handicapping, interviews, analysis, everything you could want. 6 a.m. OTB TV.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. As promised before the commercial, we are joined now by Jenny Reese of the Louisville Courier-Journal. Good morning, Jenny. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it was great, Seth. You know, the weather finally warmed up a little bit here in Kentucky, and we had some great racing. The final couple of days of the Churchill Downs meet that almost made you think that there weren't some serious problems during the meet, but there were. We can get to that later.
All right. And before we talk about some of the stakes action and then recap the meet a little bit, just always like to catch up. Strike Impact, your husband's horse. We love to follow him. Comes out of a third-place finish the beginning of November down at Churchill Downs. And I noted, pulled up the Equibase notes, down at Fairgrounds working out, and it was about this time last year they won the Delaberto. So is there something in mind for him down at Fairgrounds?
Well, he was entered for Thanksgiving Day.
Oh.
And they had an optional 62.5, and he was in for the allowance condition. They've had 2 days of sunshine, but as is the habit down there, it rained 2 days earlier, so off the turf, he was scratched down to a field of 4. You know, hoping for something else to come up, but thanks for asking. I don't know if he'll go back in the Delaberto to defend his title. Maybe if he's doing well. But you know what? He's going to be 10. I hate to admit it. It's possible he's lost a step. Although he ran really big when he just got beat. It was Breeders' Cup Day, and he was at Churchill. He was third. He was beaten a half a length and was between horses and stuff. And it was kind of like the old Strike. You know, he still wants to be a racehorse. It was kind of funny because that race went off about the time of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies with all the mayhem with the one horse being, fatally injured, and John Velasquez was in the hospital, and I completely forgot the horse was in. And one of my sisters texted me and said, Strike ran huge, and I didn't even know, the race ran. So I'm calling her, trying to find out where he finished with, he ran so huge, and she's giving me this play-by-play. I'm like, Julie, where did he finish? Oh, he was third, but he ran huge. I'm like, I thought he maybe won. So that's an aside, but yeah, thanks for asking as always about Strike.
Yeah. we will certainly keep him in mind and be rooting for him when he gets back on the track down there at the fairgrounds. All right, let's shift our attention to the big Thanksgiving weekend at Churchill Downs. Go to Friday's highlight, and we'll get some of your thoughts on the Clark Handicap. It lived up to the billing. Obviously, it was the top two horses, Will Take Charge, Game On Dude, chasing some Eclipse aspirations, and as they come down the stretch, Will Take Charge gets in gear. Looks like Game On Dude might have it all his own way late in the race, but Will Take Charge, we had a guest yesterday who said just does enough of what he has to do to get it done, and he puts it into gear late here, gets up, just catches Game On Dude in a thrilling edition of the Clark Handicap. Folks down there at Churchill had to be on the edge of their seats.
Oh, yeah. It was thrilling, and, before big crowd, Churchill doesn't announce attendance, but the day after Thanksgiving is always the biggest attendance of the fall meet, and Thanksgiving does really well. But it was like watching him in slow motion. He's got that huge stride, and I thought there's no way he catches him. And it was like you almost see the horse getting lower and lengthening. And Game On Dude ran his race. He ran huge. And it was just one of those races that puts a smile on your face. And I was just so happy to see, for one thing, because, to me it really settled the 3-year-old championship, and I was glad for that as a voter. Because before, I know what Wayne had said, I think he'd done enough, blah, blah, blah. But he didn't win the Breeders' Cup, albeit he only got beat by 2 inches. And, you still had Orb with the 2 Grade 1 wins. And, that was, I just thought you couldn't completely ignore Orb because, Will Take Charge. There's never been a 3-year-old champion until this year, because it's going to happen, that ran in all 3 Triple Crown races and didn't hit the board at any and was still was still the 3-year-old champion. I think Will Take Charge is going to do that, and deservedly so. He had a fantastic second half of the year, and he really ran well. And I also give kudos to the people, for the owners of both Game On Dude and for Will Take Charge, for putting their horses on the line, because, you could argue that Game On Dude didn't have that much to necessarily win, that if he got beat, he'd have no chance to champion older horse. But I got to tell you, he might be on the top of my ballot. I mean, I love Mucho Macho Man, but as I think it was Dave Grenick said, he was horse of the month. He had a brilliant, late October, late September, then November 2nd. But Game On Dude, I know they said he wasn't beaten much in California, and I don't think he was, but he was in the races you're supposed to be in. You're supposed to be, if you're a California horse, in the Santa Anita Handicap, in the Hollywood Gold Cup, in the Pacific Classic. And then he did ship out, and he won $1 million Grade 2 race, beating Ron the Greek in the process. And he ran very, very well. He ran great in this race. So, I have until probably, about January 2nd to, finalize things. But I'm really thinking about Game On Dude for older male, just because it is for a season. And then, We'll Take Charge for 3-year-old for sure. And Horse of the Year, I think, sort of by default, goes to Wise Dan. I mean, I have one personal ground rule on Horse of the Year. They have to have won more races than they lost. And I think if you look at who was the outstanding performer of the year, the soft turf, fast turf, turning 128, 129, setting course records. He had the one defeat when it came off the turf and went on to the synthetic. I think it was Wise Dan.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that's the way it's going to go. It certainly seems like a sentiment is Wise Dan for Horse of the Year. Things may have tilted a little bit if Game On Dude had won on Friday, but now, as you say, I think older male, he may have done enough for that. We talked on I did the Handicappers Report, the show just prior to this, and my partner in there, Anthony Mormino, made just the case you did. Game On Dude showed up in all the right races out in Southern California, got those done, and the nice finish on Friday should be enough for older male. We'll see how that shakes out. I have one question, Jenny, and you may not know the answer to this. What was the delay getting into the winner's circle after the Clark for Will Take Charge? He kept circling and circling, and at one point Mark Johnson said...
I think it was maybe the Hortons getting down.
That's what I wondered. I wondered if maybe...
I'm thinking, because I was wondering the same thing. And then he came in, and a little aside there, and the poor Hortons, she has such super people. Their luggage got lost and went to Los Angeles. And apparently Mr. Horton kept apologizing to everybody about the way he was. Firstly, he dressed the kind of way I dress, so I thought he was dressed fine. But, he had a suit and all that stuff. And, I just felt bad for them. But he was so happy. I bet he had, tears in his eyes. He's saying, this is the kind of horse I've waited for a lifetime for. And this week he should be making a decision on what he's going to do. Because he said he can't sleep at night, agonizing. Does he keep the horse and run him another year, or does he sell as a stallion? And it's sounding more and more what's going to happen is he's going to make a deal with somebody that'll let him stay in for part of the horse as a 4-year-old and run, which that would be great because this horse is just now getting good.
Yeah.
To me, if you start the Horse of the Year poll beginning the next year, who do you have on top? You've got Will Take Charge on top.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't start to really get good until the Travers. We're talking the end of summer there, and since then he's been really good. And I can tell you, I was going back and forth with some emails with Keith Jones yesterday from Parks, and Will Take Charge didn't only thrill the owner. I think the folks at Parks are happy too. They're looking maybe to upgrade that Pennsylvania Derby grading with a 3-year-old Eclipse winner having won this year. So he made a lot of people put a lot of smiles on faces. All right, let's shift to Saturday and go to the 2-year-olds. The horses we'll be looking for next year on the Derby Trail. And I certainly think the winner will watch the stretch run of the Kentucky Jockey Club. And I certainly think the winner there, Tapiture, is going to be one to look forward to going forward. Well, entered the race as a maiden, but it should be noted in the career debut, ran second up at Saratoga to Strong Mandate, then just missed in the Iroquois in the second career start. A nice maiden effort at Churchill at the end of October, and then validated his talent here. Tapiture, as I say, for Steve Asmussen and Winchell, looks like a good horse going forward to the 3-year-old season.
Yeah, absolutely. And the common denominator is in the Iroquois when he just got beat a half length for everything, and then the other day when he won by 4 1/4 or whatever, they were both 2-turn races. The others were all 1 turn. He's a 2-turn horse, and Asmussen was saying, good thing you didn't waste that after the maiden race. At some point, you just go ahead with the program, and the fact that Strong Mandate, who will take charge as a stablemate, of course, won the Hopeful after beating Tapiture in the Saratoga maiden race, made them feel like, okay, sometimes it's just a technicality that you haven't won a race. And if you believe in your horse, you go on with the program. Hey, this is an aside. A year ago in the Kentucky Jockey Club, the last place finisher was Will Take Charge.
Oh, there you go. That is an interesting little trivia
There
fact.
are so many good 2-year-olds that come out of those 2 days of racing, and not always in the stakes, but in the maiden races. And I tell you, a horse that I'm looking forward to seeing down the road is Conquest Titan. He won a 7-furlong allowance race, and he was one of the best, if not the best, sort of Cassie 2-year-olds. And came with a high billing during the right at the end of the spring meet. Got beat, got up at a crazy speed duel, went up and won a Woodbine Stakes for fun. Then ran in the in the Breeders' Cup, which got caught up in a pace duel. But I think he's going to be one to watch. And it's one of those days. So many people like their 2-year-olds, and it's funny. So a friend of mine, I was texting him who I was hearing about, and I did terrible. Like trying to tie him up in exactas and this and this. And this other guy did great. Oh, thank you. I said, are you kidding? I'm busted. So it just all goes to show is what you do with the information that's important. And obviously I was making the wrong moves on Saturday.
Another one that looks interesting to me was the horse that won the finale for those very same connections that won the Kentucky Jockey Club.
Right. Asmussen, right back in one.
Mm-hmm. Gold Hawk, I believe, was the horse's name, out of Caressing. So that one will be interesting. Let's look
That's right. Hey, and we need to, really quickly, mention about the winner of the Goldenrod.
Yeah, absolutely. We got the video here. We're going to watch Vext get it done down the stretch. The number 7 Vext will get it done for Sean Bridgman, Al Stahl. But in this race, also notable, the owner, Claiborne Farm. This was a big win.
Breeder. Calumet for most stakes wins at Churchill Downs at 32, and I think she's a really nice filly. You know what? She's a full sister to Sign, who won the Pocahontas last year. It was for several months DQ'd for a very small, teeny therapeutic medication overage that it became real controversial, and the commission ended up reinstating the victory, and rightly so. It should never have been a DQ in the first place. But Simon subsequently was injured and is not back. Right? I need to check on that to find out if they even could try to bring her back. But anyway, this was just the pedigree is there for her to be a really nice horse. She's by art. She should go long, and I think she's a horse to watch for on the Oaks campaign.
Yeah, and that was notable. The history of Churchill Downs now tied between Claiborne and Calumet. A couple of very prominent names there at the top. All right, Jenny, we did wrap up the Churchill meet on Saturday with that Stars of Tomorrow card. Got a couple of minutes left. Why don't you just give us a little recap of the traditional fall meet? Obviously, this year they had that nice little September meet in there. We'll see how that goes in the years going forward, but this was the traditional meet. How'd things wrap up?
Not good. I mean, the ending weekend could kind of almost make you forget how bad. I mean, purses were down like almost 30%.
Oh.
Part of that was a function of Churchill overpaying in September, higher than what the horsemen had expected, and with assurances that, November wouldn't be impacted. It was impacted. They had trouble filling some races they've never had trouble filling. Usually there's a really great buzz about the fall meet, and you'd almost think there's nothing wrong with Kentucky racing. There was a decided lack of buzz up until, like the last weekend. People shipping out early for the first time ever that I can remember, and other people that go back farther than me can remember. Fairgrounds purses are better than Churchill Downs. Part of it is a function of, the implosion of Kentucky racing. This meet was not insular. Some of it was self-inflicted. I think when Churchill got rid of the Twin Spires Club, where people could get in for $1, they've run some people off. They're going for the people that make them the most money. The big volume, but I think what you're seeing is there's people that maybe make that incremental money for you too that aren't going to the races anymore. And it's really, really sad because usually the fall meet is a very terrific meet. It seems to cure whatever ills you have from the spring meet with its chronic shortage of horses.
Yeah, that's too bad because certainly, as you say, the closing weekend offers some very good racing, and those Stars of Tomorrow's cards are always a lot of fun. But I did read earlier that strange where it seemed like the September meet did okay, but it didn't meet their expectations, which led to the purses being decreased a little bit. So was the traditional fall meet maybe being disappointed? Was that somehow a function of the September meet?
Well, nothing's in a vacuum. I think, who's to say? Like Dale Roman says, people in Louisville get set in their ways, and they were not used to September, and so maybe they kind of it took off some of the buzz from November. Those are things for Churchill. There's a lot of people that are really paid really well over there to make those determinations. A lot of it is Churchill and Kentucky, have been fighting this for 20 years, the competition of the Racinos in the region. And look at the Delta Jackpot, how well the Kentucky horses did in that whole stakes card there. Look at when, you name it, in any of the region, if it's Prairie Meadows, if it's Mountaineer, and even some horses left here and went to Penn National and did very well. Indiana couldn't exist without Kentucky racing. And it's just surprising probably that it hasn't really tanked worse sooner. So some of it is outside forces. I think some of it, Churchill management, there's a real disconnect with the fans. I'm not sure that they realize it.
Yeah, so we'll keep our eyes on that because obviously that's been an ongoing story, that the slots side of that, the chase for slots in Kentucky, it's tough to keep up when the neighbors have those slots infused purses. So we'll keep our eyes on Kentucky going forward. And Jenny, got to wrap it up, but I'm assuming there will be a meet recap article coming up in the Courier-Journal?
I think it's going to be in Wednesday's paper. The boss said we got UK basketball playing tonight, so I'll start on today and I'll have to have it finished tomorrow, and it should be probably up online late tomorrow. And thank you, as always, for asking and for the love you give us and the links you give us.
That's the game plan, and I'll link to that one as well over on Equidaily, the meet recap. Always look forward to those as you wrap things up, as well as the previews also. Jenny Reese of the Louisville Courier-Journal, happy to have you on board as always. Hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. We'll talk to you down the road.
Sounds great. Happy handicapping and happy holidays, Seth.
Thanks a lot. Jenny Reese, Louisville Courier-Journal. Prior to that, it was Mike Penna of the Horse Racing Radio Network. That wraps things up for a Monday edition of Racing Across America. We've kicked off another week. We're here every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. That wraps things up. A little earlier was the Handicappers Report. Hopefully we gave out some winners. So good luck at the races this afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.